I'm sure there's some of y'all that think I don't actually read the comments or, something of that nature, but I do. And I'm gonna provide for my wonderful viewers and my wonderful commenters, alright? Let's talk about the Mangekyō Sharingan. A couple things I want to point out before we get started talking about the class mod, what it does, how you use it, all that good stuff, is one, I want to mention that this and one other class mod, which we'll get to another week, is unique in the sense that you do have to be a specific clan, and that you do need to be an Uchiha, or if you're not, you need to at least have access to the Shar-Rinnegan. So if you're not an Uchiha, well then you have to have had that eye implanted somehow, so you just need a Shar-Rinnegan at bare minimum. Now, just like with the last class mod discussion, I want to start with things to consider and things to kind of look out for before you give this class mod to a player. Specifically because this is one of the stronger / possibly strongest class mods that they have to offer. And we'll get into why once we start talking specifics, but again, kind of following the same philosophy as a lot of the other ones, don't give it to a player who's super min-maxy, okay? And I know it sucks, because the min-maxy players want the really cool things, but especially min-maxy players that have been building their character prepping for this. This is a really freaking strong class mod. It will give players more resources than literally any other class mod available, because of the different things you can do with it, and just the sheer power that it holds. So, something to keep in mind. Another thing to note is you don't want whoever has this to just start stomping every single thing, which is very reasonable. If your other player levels are, let's say, around 8, which is when you should probably be giving the first level of an MS at the earliest, if a player has an MS and the other players don't even have a class mod or some kind of benefit that you as the DM have given them, they're just gonna stomp. And I'm gonna be very honest, it's not gonna be super fun for the other players. So if you are planning on giving an MS in your campaign, I would highly recommend giving the other players their class mods first, because this class mod is probably going to outshine those other ones unless you give them another extra boost on top of it. And again, for other things when it comes to the MS, don't be afraid to impose certain penalties and things like that that aren't even included, because while the MS does have a built-in system to stop players from using it too much, if you give the MS to a player and they start to level up their character and really lean into it, which is fine, it's really fun to do, but they could just get a little too strong. So don't be afraid to impose a time limit penalty, maybe a round limit where they can only have it active for so long before it shuts down, something along those lines to show the player, hey, you can still use it, but you gotta be careful. Another idea it throws in there is having enemies specifically good at targeting it. So the MS does drain resources, or at least uses a lot of them, so having some kind of enemy that maybe boosts that drainage, right? Or like takes resources away from them that they would already have, it helps kind of combat what the MS does. So let's start off with the obvious thing first. How do you unlock the Mangekyō Sharingan? And it gives you a little unlock table of things you can look for in a player's campaign to give it to them. But honestly, as a DM, just make the call. You're going to know what's best for your campaign. Maybe reaching 0 hit points is a little too easy. Maybe it happens quite often for your players for whatever reason. Watching a loved one die, however, is a pretty big deal. So, kind of depend, vary it, and it doesn't have to be directly ripped off this table. 100% feel free to choose another way for them to gain it. Just the main important thing is don't make it easy. You don't want your characters to just hit level 8 and go, all right, you have a Mangekyō Sharingan. Have fun. You want them to earn it. The other reason you want them to earn it too, not just because it's powerful, is because it makes it feel better. As a player, if you just kind of keep getting handed these buffs and these cool things over and over again, it's going to get boring, because it'll be fun at first for a little bit, and then after a while of using it, you kind of fall into the like, well, this is just too easy now. Not only did I do nothing to earn this power, but this power I've gained is also just making it too easy to run through everything. So when giving / gaining this Mangekyō Sharingan, make it something pretty extravagant. Not only that, players should not get this at request. Now, they can talk to a DM about possibly earning it later, but the players don't get to choose to earn it. Okay, they don't get to just magically go, oh, I just watched my mom die. I have MS now. No, sweetie. All right, that's the DM's call, and it always should be. The other side of this, once you get that MS, is leveling it up. I would stick pretty close to the table, as you can see right here, on your minimum level requirements. While, hey, maybe you can give it to them 1, maybe 2 levels earlier, be really careful, because the more you start to do that, the more your campaign's going to start to get amped up and just go way past whatever their level requirement is. Now, if you're planning on a shorter campaign, then by all means do it, because then you can amp up the enemies faster. But if you're planning some kind of like multi-year campaign that's going to last a long time, don't give this too early, because it will make it very unfun very fast, not just for the players, but for you as a DM as well. Because as a DM, you're going to have to start making some enemies that are quite absurd and putting in probably way more prep time than you initially intended. So you've gone ahead and given your players this Mangekyō Sharingan. What's next? Well, for one, understand that you and the player both really need to heavily keep track of their visual burn. What is this visual burn? It's basically the negative side effect of having the MS. If you've watched Naruto before, then you know that once they get the Mangekyō Sharingan, if it gets overused, it can literally make them go blind, which is the exact system they have in place. And while you can add your own little tropes like we talked about earlier, I highly recommend sticking to having this visual burn at a minimum, because it's a well thought out system and it lets the player have a lot of control over how risky they want to get with the MS, if they want to save it for special moments, if they just want to abuse, that's fine, they're going to gain a lot of burn really fast. And how this burn works is you roll a D100 plus whatever your visual burn is once you surpass your limit. And your limit is going to depend on your level. So as you can see on the chart here, first level's 10, second level's 15, so on and so forth. So once you pass this 10 visual burn limit, you're going to roll that check, and depending on your roll is what this negative is going to be. And this negative can be all the way up to 150 plus, where you literally are permanently blinded from using the EMS too much. Now, for the visual burn, the way it works is honestly super simple and again, well thought out. When using these different abilities that your MS might have, as you can see here, if you spend this action to do Jet, you're going to gain 2 burn. If you do this bonus action, you're going to gain 3 burn. So it's kind of like another resource that they have to manage. Also important to note about burn, you do get rid of it. And it talks about once you take a long rest, you can roll a d4 and subtract that much from the burn. And you might be thinking to yourself, dang, you don't lose a whole lot of burn fast. And no, you don't. And that's kind of the point. They want MS to be something that's really, really powerful, but you're on a constant gamble of, should I do it? Should I not do it? Am I going to be pushing myself too much? Am I going to gain permanent blindness? Things like that. So really good, well thought out system to help balance it. As we start to talk about features here, just know I'm going to be bouncing around this a little bit, and I'm not going to go in the exact order that it shows it in the book, because I think that there's certain parts that need to be talked about in a certain manner. So as for features, the 3 main things you're going to be looking at are the actual Mangekyō Sharingan itself and just the kind of overall base amps that it gives you. Your Mangekyō Arts, which are basically in a sense kind of your special abilities or special jutsus that you gain from having this Mangekyō. And then finally your Susanoo Manifestation, right? The giant monster thing that you get to surround your body with. Talking about the base MS now and kind of how it works, what you get. First off, to activate it, it's a bonus action that costs you 10 chakra. Now, I want to be clear, you can still activate your regular Sharingan without actually activating this class mod. It doesn't full-on replace it, but rather just gives you an amped version that you can use. Once you do activate it, understand, and this is important to note, that your character's eyes are going to shift to a new pattern instead of the normal 3-tone that you see. If you haven't seen Naruto before, I'll kind of put some images down below of the different Mangekyōs from the show. Typically, there's some kind of radial, somewhat symmetrical pattern that is created in the eye, and they all just look pretty dope. Some bonuses you get. One, you get an additional feature from the general Sharingan features that you get to pick, so that's always fun. You get a +2 bonus to your AC, all your dex saving throws, and genjutsu saving throws. Again, just really nice base bonuses to have. And then lastly, if you're casting a fire release jutsu, you can spend an extra visual burn to amp that up, right? So up casting it 1 rank. When doing that, the really cool thing as well is you can go above what you usually can. So at level 8, you can only do C rank, but you can upcast those up to B to spend an actual visual burn. Be careful with your visual burn. As the second class mod feature, we have the Mangekyō Arts. Now, later on, I'm going to actually list all the different arts you get, but these are the things that are unique to your MS. So if you've seen the show, things like Itachi's Amaterasu, things like Kamui from Kakashi and Obito, things of that nature, right? So it's the special things that your MSs give you that other Sharingans don't have. And the final class mod feature is going to be your Susanoo Manifestation, which again, if you haven't seen the show, I'll go ahead and drop an image down below so you know what I'm talking about. But it's basically a huge suit of armor that you get that's just gonna amp you a lot. Even if you don't have the full perfect Susanoo, the partial one's still gonna give you a ton of bonuses. So our first Mangekyō art we're gonna talk about is Malefic Illumination. if you're a ninjutsu specialist Uchiha, basically no question this is what you want to run, all right? This is what's going to give you access to some really hyper unique jutsus that you see in the show. Things like Amaterasu, right? The Eternal Black Flame. Things like Raijin, which if you don't remember is Sasuke's giant lightning dragon that he brings from the sky. So basically this gives you access to some really cool, powerful nature release specific jutsus. It's also important to note that there's one for every single nature release. So if you have a specific one that your character went into and you didn't just go into the typical fire, you have some unique options. It also comes with a few different actions and bonus actions that you can do. Some options here with 2 burn, 3 burn, 1 burn. Again, that's applying your visual burn, so be careful spamming these. You gain a bonus action, and you also gain some reaction options. Next up here is going to be the Malefic Dominion, and this one is your Kakashi Obito style MS, where you kind of have your pocket dimension that you can use to bring things in, bring things out, crush people, things of that nature. This one doesn't have any special jutsus, but rather some actions, bonus actions, and reactions that you get to use that Kamui style thing. Next up, we have Malefic Instinct. This one specifically is really good if you're a either Buki Jutsu or Taijutsu user and you use those very heavily. It's also really unique because you actually get the option to use just about any of those. I mean, as you can read here with Instinctual Combat, you cast 1 Taijutsu or Buki Jutsu of A rank or lower with a casting time of an action, treating it with this cost, blah, 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 blah. But you don't have to know it. It's just a Taijutsu or Buki Jutsu of A rank or lower, which is so sick. So if you're a Taijutsu or Buki Jutsu specialist style person, Malefic Instinct is really sick. Next up, we have Malefic Illusion, which, if it isn't clear by the name, is going to be for your Genjutsu specialist. Think things like Tsukiyomi that Itachi has in the show. If you want some very powerful Genjutsu style action, reaction, bonus actions, Malefic Illusion is pretty nasty. Now the next one might honestly be my personal favorite one, and that's going to be Malefic Hypnosis. This is really, really good if you want some nasty, nasty roleplay options, because this is the stuff that, as you can see, Shisui has. So things like his Kodo Amatsu Kami, hopefully I didn't screw that up, where you really alter their brain, kind of like the thing that's in the little crow's eye, right? That thing, if you remember that from the show. And you get the ability to rewrite people's memories. You even get Izanami, which in this case doesn't completely blind you immediately, but rather takes 30 burn. So it is important to note if you're going to use this one, it's very burn intensive, and that's because of how powerful it can be for a campaign. So if you take this one, understand that you're not going to be necessarily super strong combat-wise with your MS, but rather your roleplay is going to be absolutely nutty, and your eyes are going to burn a lot. Our second to last one here, Malefic Alteration, is probably my second favorite out of all of them because I'm an absolute sucker for very unique, interesting defensive options, and that's exactly what this gives you. If you remember the fight between Sasuke and our absolute favorite character, Danzo, this is basically what Danzo uses, where he gets to die but not die multiple times over. And similar to the last one, it's really, really expensive, but really, really powerful. Even just looking at the reaction down here, which is 30 burn, which is absolutely no joke. When you fall to 0 hit points, you can, as a reaction, rewrite reality so that the thing that would have killed you instead does not. Your hit points are restored back to its value before you took the triggering damage. So this one gives you a ton of really unique defensive options. Super solid if you're the kind of character that gets in and fights and maybe is the tank of the team. Gives you some cool, unique stuff. Now, our final Mangekyō art that you can choose from, Malefic Telekinetic. Basically, you have telekinesis, and you can mark weapons and things like that to either make them stronger, call them back to you if you try to throw them or something along those lines. So this is really, really good for weapon specialist, and I probably really wouldn't put it on anyone besides that, but it is unique. And if you're trying to think of a show example, probably something like how the Rinnegan has its kind of overall pull and push ability. It's similar to that, but on a much smaller scale and really for weapons specifically. Finally, the last feature to talk about for the MS is going to be the Susanoo. Now, the Susanoo, again, is basically that big glowing suit of armor that Uchihas get whenever they start to master that MS. And there's 3 different levels of it that you can use. The first is the partial, which basically gives you a ribcage looking form around you. Again, you can always flavor text this how you want to choose the color and design. But all it is a rib cage, so it's a little more defensive. You can use some bonus action and bonus chakra in order to make it gain arms and attack, but it gets pretty expensive pretty quickly. Next up is going to be your half body manifestation, which basically does it from about hips up. So torso, head, arms, that kind of thing. This one is a little bit stronger, a little bit more options. It also has the arms permanently, so you don't have to spend extra stuff to attack, which is always nice. And it's just overall stronger. Finally, you can do the full body manifestation. Now, this isn't until the 4th level of MS, so this is pretty deep into it. But you get a full body. This is actually a kind of good image of you have legs, you have head, you have arms, you have the whole shebang. And there's even a whole separate stat block that you use of your hit points, your new AC. You have some different attacks and abilities that you get to use. It is important to note that while it does have a 1 intelligence, wisdom, and charisma for the actual construct, when making the saving throws, you don't get -5, you use your own. So don't worry about some kind of weird genjutsu nonsense being super OP against your Susanoo. That's not quite how it works. To get to the last 2 very juicy parts of the Mangekyō Sharingan, first one's going to be your EMS, or Eternal Mangekyō Sharingan. For those that don't know in the actual Naruto show, the EMS is a amp that you can give to your Mangekyō Sharingan that inherently makes it infinite, in the sense of you no longer have to worry about going blind, things like that. You don't get perfect infinite uses without going blind in this variation, but it does make it harder to do so, which is always a bonus. But you do need to know that in order to get access to the EMS, you have to implant some other Sharingan into your eyes. But it can't just be any Sharingan now. It has to be blood related, and direct blood related at that. So something like a child, a parent, a sibling. And to get access to those eyes, you know, there's options that you can take. I'm not here to tell you what to do. You can kill your sibling. But I'm not going to tell you what to do, right? It's completely up to you. You do you, you do you, boo. I'm not controlling your destiny. But some bonuses that you get. 1, the checks in order to start gaining these negatives are a lot harder. So as you can see, the first one was 80, but now it's 95. So it's a 15 higher check to actually have these negatives happen. Another thing, when you take these full rests, in order to lose your burn, you lose more. Instead of 1d4, it's 2d4. Then once you max out the class, it goes all the way up to 3d4. So, big poggies all around. We love that. It's also important to note that it is quite a lot of downtime in order to actually get this EMS and let the process heal properly. So you can see here, the ritual takes up to 12 weeks. Talks about how if someone that is helping you with it can hit a DC 35 medicine check, which yes is stupid high, but they're also implanting Sharingan into you, so it's not an easy process, then you can have less time. So, important to note and think about that, hey, while it is very pricey, it is a really nice bonus to not have to worry about going blind nearly as much. And last but not least, we have the Shar-Rinnegan, which again, if you've watched the Naruto show, this is what Sasuke gets at the end, leading into the war arc, whenever he gets that 6 past power put into him, where he gets that Rinnegan that has the Sharingan tome in it. That's what they're talking about here. It also does clarify a few things. 1, it should be limited. As a DM, please do not give your player a Shar-Rinnegan that they just get forever. It's powerful, and that's the point, all right? It is intended to be like a final boss, power of the gods, here you go crazy brazy with it. That's the intention of it, so please do not give this to players permanently. It even recommends doing a max of like 8 hours and then it goes away. But let's get into some of its fun uses. So for the first and probably one of the more main features of it, which should be fairly obvious because it's a Rinne Sharingan, you get some Rinnegan-like abilities. So you get to choose 3 arts from the Rinnegan class mod, which there will be a video on in the future, but you can go look at those right now if you really want to, after you finish the video, of course. After that, they have the Emi no Minaka. Don't know if that's pronounced right, but basically, that's the thing that lets you get to the different dimensions. So if you've watched to the end of Shippuden, spoiler alert if you haven't, get out now. But Sasuke has the ability to jump dimensions and hop to different worlds and different lands and things like that. And this gives you the ability to actually create your own ideas and your own worlds and your own dimensions, which is super, super sick. Also super, super OP, but super sick nonetheless. And it even says to talk to your DM about some different ideas you can have. It talks about how maybe a world where it's like lava everywhere, but instead of doing regular damage, it's chakra damage. Or maybe a world where there's no floor, and if you can't fly, you just fall infinitely until you get out. So tons of really cool options that are, in the most literal sense, overpowered. They just are. And if you don't want to be too creative, or maybe you can only come up with 1 or 2, but you want some more variation and options, it does give you 4 different options that you can read through here if you want to give you some variation if, hey, you're just not feeling like creating your own. So there you have it, all the good info on the Mangekyō Sharingan, how to earn it, what to do with it, features, abilities, how to level it up, variations of it, all those good things. One thing I want to tell everybody before we go is channel memberships are live. For $3 a month, you can become a channel member, which basically puts a little badge next to your name anytime I'm live streaming or anything like that. It gives you top comment reply priority, which basically means anytime I'm going through the comments in a video and I'm looking through on my end, it's going to put anyone that's a member on top. So I will see yours, and you're a lot more likely to get a reply or a heart or things of that nature. And lastly, if you're in our Discord and you have your YouTube and Discord account linked, it's going to give you an exclusive role and an exclusive chat room that is for YouTube members only. So if you can, it really does mean a lot. It helps the channel grow. It helps fund some bigger events and ideas that we have that we want to do. But again, it's not mandatory. Genuinely, just subbing and viewing the channel is more than enough support, and I can't thank you guys enough. So hopefully, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace out.